make sure everyone is ready. I don't know. Are we ready?
Sure.
We're ready. Oh, we did all the things. Look at us. All right.
Yeah,
So
yay. I
happy.
love it when a plan comes together.
Yeah. Well, I mean, it's right on theme because two people with ADHD trying to
Yeah,
juggle the
yeah, navigate
details,
all the
right?
things. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
And I'm like, how did we not ever talk about that before either? Like, I don't think when did you start publicizing the ADD stuff? Like,
When I got diagnosed, which was 3 years ago.
oh, so it hasn't been that long. Okay. That makes me
No,
feel
no.
slightly better that it took me a while to catch on.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Yeah, me too. 50 years.
Well, so I am going to introduce. So I'm Jackie Shelley. I'm one of the hosts of Jackie and Irvin Are Accidentally in Charge. Theoretically, this is part of our interview series. So I would love it if you would also introduce yourself.
Yeah, I'm Dave Delaney. I host a little podcast called ADHD Wise Squirrels, and it's for late diagnosed adults with ADHD like me
And me.
and
Hooray.
you. Yeah, yeah. And I do coaching and public speaking. That's a big part of my business too. So,
Which, I mean, we had kind of a previous iteration as like social media people. We met, I don't know when, like probably 2010 or 11, a
yeah,
while
somewhere around
ago.
there. Yeah,
Mhm.
yeah, yeah, for sure.
And it was, that whole time period is a little hazy for me, but I feel like it was always one of those "you're a friend of my friend" kind of connections, and I'm continually being like, "Dave, how do you know Jeff?" or "How do you know whoever?"
Yeah,
So
right, right. Yeah,
yeah.
the social networks definitely helped to kind of connect those dots back before they were all evil.
I think they always were. We were just a little like naive and optimistic about them, maybe.
Yeah. Yeah. I think it's a bit, I think it's a mix of like, yes, there's that. But then I also think, uh, in their defense, I think they had to figure out how to pay for their
Yes.
businesses. And so they needed some sort of business, and then would take, investors or investment, and then they would go public and have, shareholders and boards to account to as well. And suddenly it was all about profit over the people. And so, yeah, that's where we're at today.
Yeah, although I'm continually trying to work myself back around to that optimism because I
Mhm.
think I feel like the people like you that I did meet form that kind of backbone of like moral integrity or whatever it is that makes it worth being still in those spaces,
Mhm.
and I'm trying to kind of reclaim some of that. So
Yeah. And I think I mean, I think it's great. I think there's still a place for social media, social networks, certainly, but I take it all with a cynical grain of salt now because, like a friend of mine I post on LinkedIn multiple times a day usually, and or at least once a day, and ran into a friend recently, and we've been connected on LinkedIn forever, and he was like, "Oh man, I haven't seen you post anything in the longest time," and I'm like, "What?" And so we're really at the mercy sometimes of algorithms that
yeah.
that will or won't choose to show things. So I think it's fogged up sort of friendship. I said fogged. You don't have to beep it. Uh, but it's kind of made things challenging because you're really at the mercy of whatever the social network is going to kind of show you.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
and then you can end up resenting not hearing from someone for a long time in a way if you're not really thinking about, oh wait, they don't know that I'm still alive because they haven't seen me on Facebook or LinkedIn or whatever in forever.
Yeah.
So in their defense, and then also just making the mistake of thinking these are places to manage friendships when I think it's easier to do it either through email or texting, and then most importantly in person when possible too.
Yeah, although in person, um, for a lot of these friendships that I formed originally through social networks, in person is not an option, and I like love to make it one when I possibly can,
Right.
but that's where I'm trying to maybe use the technology to bridge that gap, because I just can't be all these places in the world I would love to be, you know?
No, absolutely. Yeah. And I think like early days, like Twitter, for example, which now is somewhere I wouldn't recommend, my worst enemies.
Right,
But
right.
back in the day with Twitter, for example, like I would organize like tweet ups, right? When I
Same, yeah.
traveled.
Mhm.
And so, or Geek Breakfast, which is an event I used to run as well. And so the way it would normally work, and in my book in New Business Networking, like I wrote about that in the chapters on different social networks, that, you know, usually the way it would work as an early adopter, at least, because I started on Twitter in February '07.
Oh, you were ahead of me, yeah.
I was,
Mhm.
yeah. And so, but back then, like, or, for a bunch of
Well,
years from
we
then
were
too,
talking
you would,
too
well, I
about
would
your
meet,
early podcasting stuff, the 2000, what did you say, like,
I started podcasting in 2005.
yeah, there
Yeah.
you
So,
go.
yeah. But
Mhm.
like with Twitter, I was going to say, like we would either meet on Twitter and then maybe attend an event somewhere like a South by Southwest or whatever,
Yeah,
or conference
yeah,
or something. And then we would meet up in person, and that meeting up in person would, like, I think would transform, add magic to the relationship. And now we're like really friends because we met in person,
yeah.
versus, or it would be, I've never met you before, but we both bump into each other at an event, like a
Mhm.
conference or tweet up or whatever, and we exchange Twitter handles or whatever, and we follow each other, and then we stay in touch after having met in person to begin with, and
Right.
then yeah. So it's not to say like I still have friends online that I haven't met, but like physically in
Well,
person,
I'm
right?
pretty sure this is the first time we've spoken,
Yeah, yeah,
in
yeah, yeah.
person. We've, and after many years of like communicating through a keyboard. So
Yeah,
yeah.
right, right.
Mhm.
And where are you based again? I can't remember.
So I'm currently in Morgan Hill, California. I've been in the Bay Area, some part of the San Francisco Bay Area for my whole like adult life, pretty much. So
Yeah,
yeah.
yeah.
How about
And
you? You're where?
I'm in Nashville, like
Nashville.
from Toronto. So, but I've been in Nashville for 18 years now.
Yeah, that explains the Jeff Goins connection for one thing. I was going to ask you about that. So yeah.
Oh yeah,
So
yeah.
the only time I've been to Nashville was for his book signing, actually.
Yeah,
So yeah.
nice. Yeah, I've spoken at a couple of his conferences over the
I
years.
was going to show you something. Hold on. Uh, so you said your thing is called ADHD Wise Squirrels. So
Yeah. Oh,
this is
there
a
you go.
squirrel, and then this is also a squirrel.
Oh
And
man, that's
the
amazing.
story of these, they're both felted handmade items. They're
Yeah,
from my two best friends.
that's
They
great.
both separately got into felting and made me a squirrel, and both gifted them a squirrel for my birthday one
That's
year.
great. I love
And
those.
so that is definitely a symbol that is
Your
very,
spirit
very
animal.
much connected to my experience of this whole ADD thing. And I think my friends are able to see and recognize that. So
Yeah. When were you diagnosed?
I was 32, so
Okay.
it's been over 10 years. Yeah,
Yeah.
it's been a while,
Yeah.
but it was late,
Yeah.
as
Yeah.
you
For sure.
talk
Yeah.
about, like, I sort of, I think I read, it was probably in the 90s when I was in high school. They came out with, what is it, Lazy, Stupid, or Crazy is the part of the title I remember. There was a book
Yeah. Yeah.
that was
Not
pretty
lazy,
big.
crazy, or
Mhm.
stupid or whatever. Yeah.
I know the fact that I can't ever get quite through
Yeah.
it.
Yeah.
I'm
Yeah.
like, I
Yeah.
don't even want to say the words because I don't want them to apply to me. But so I read that when I was in high school. So I had some sort of awareness that there was such a thing and that I might be in that basket, but I definitely had that. I'm not really sure, doesn't quite match up with me. And it turns out I have the type that's not hyperactive. So that's hard to match up to like the mainstream description sometimes.
Oh yeah,
So
absolutely.
yeah.
That's why so many women were missed, right? Because,
Hmm.
and again, I'm not a doctor. I always like to say, and I don't pretend I'm
Yeah.
one on the
Yeah.
internet. But I've learned a ton, and now most of my clients are ADHDers, or in coaching at least, rather, and still speaking as well. Because yeah, like I've learned that like women tend to be 5 years behind men in diagnosis, but a big reason for that is because there's one like type of ADHD, and there's three presentations. And so, and boys generally, but I mean, not always, but boys typically are predominantly hyperactive in or impulsive like me. And I use the analogy of like Bart Simpson, right? So you're like tearing up the classroom, being a pain in the ass for your teachers, right? And they want to know what the hell's going on here because you're
Yeah.
just disrupting everything. And then predominantly inattentive, which is more, and I use the analogy of Lisa Simpson, right? Which again isn't always girls, but tends to be more female. And then there's the combined presentation, which I'm still not completely clear. I think as you get older, I think, and mature, and you develop coping mechanisms, especially if you haven't been diagnosed or treated, and you I think you become sort of more combined presentation, but so it's a bit of both, but I don't know enough about that combined presentation, but yeah, it's really those three. So that, and that's why so many women are now being diagnosed, is because
Hmm.
because ADHD is almost as heritable as height.
Right.
And it means that one or more of your children probably has ADHD if you do, and it also means one or more
Both
of
of
your parents.
mine.
Yeah, yeah.
Both of
So
mine and both of my parents. Yeah. So
right,
there
and
you
so
go.
and oftentimes the mother is taking their child to get treated or tested for ADHD, and in that process, as they're learning about it for their to care for their own child, they're like, wait a minute, hold on a second, what?
Yeah.
And they realize like, oh, I have ADHD as well. And
So I
so
wanted to ask you too,
yeah,
are you branching out into other neurodivergence things? Because, as it turns out, it seems very likely that I have both autism and ADHD. I'm what they call ADHD, and I'm learning a
right.
lot about that of late, and so I'm wondering how much you've encountered that in your work, and
Yeah, I
have you
mean, it
started,
comes up. I had one listener um ask me like, why don't you talk about autism more, or why don't you have more of that on the show? And the purpose like of Why Squirrels is really, and I call it Why Squirrels because it's for late diagnosed adults, right, with ADHD
hmm
like me. So I don't have autism that I know of.
hmm
So I always like I told the woman, I was like, well, I don't have a podcast for like Black women either, because I'm not a Black woman, right?
Sure.
And
Yeah.
so yeah, and so I ended up talking to her for a while, and I was like, you should start an autism or even an ADHD autism podcast, because I'm sure the world would do well learning more. But that's
hmm
always been my goal, is to
To focus
focus,
on,
and
yeah.
also because as I said, I'm not a doctor,
Yeah.
and so I'm trying to understand my own operating system, and in doing that, helping other wise squirrels or neurotypical people or whomever
hmm
who need coaching as well. So it's yeah, so that's
Yeah.
kind of why
I
I
guess.
don't know enough about it. I don't pretend to know anything about
I mean,
autism,
I'm
but
no expert either. I'm also not, trained in,
yeah,
psychology or any of these things. But, it's most of what I've learned has been of necessity, not because, it's like I'm trying to, same thing, figure out my own
yeah.
operating system. But I was wondering, one thing I've been seeing a lot is that for a lot of people like me, you get diagnosed with ADD first. And then once you get treated for that, suddenly the autism becomes visible, where before it maybe wasn't
That's
as
interesting.
obvious. It's like hard to separate out, right? But
Yeah,
I
yeah.
was wondering, since you work with a lot of people with ADD, if you're encountering that phenomenon where they get treated for the ADD and then suddenly they're like, oh, I have this other thing that I didn't even know was there,
Well, one thing that I don't know about that specifically. I haven't heard
hmm
of that much, but I mean, again, I'm not saying that doesn't happen or doesn't
Sure.
exist, right? Um, but anxiety and depression are the most common comorbidities that are strange
Mm-hmm.
bedfellows that come along with ADHD. Not for everybody, of course.
Oh, I've
And you
had
can,
both. Yeah.
right, and you can have clinical anxiety or depression without ADHD, of course. But because with ADHD, those one or both of those often can come along for the ride, as can, but to a lesser degree, like
hmm
OCD, bipolar, and things. But for those anxiety and depression, what again traditionally my understanding too is that more women were treated for the anxiety
Oh,
or
sure. Yeah.
depression rather
hmm
than rather than being diagnosed with ADHD. And oftentimes what
Yes.
happens is because ADHD is sort of at the root, sort of, I use the term loosely, but at the root sort of cause, not cause, but it's kind of at the background and kind of can sort of cause, I guess, partly the anxiety and depression. You need to treat both.
Yeah.
You need to treat the
Hmm.
ADHD, but you also need to treat the anxiety and depression. So I have anxiety, so I'm treated for anxiety, but I'm also treated for my ADHD as well. But this is partly what accounts for the statistic. And if you go to whysquirrels.com/life, I have that there, from Russell Barkley. That with
Okay.
undiagnosed and untreated ADHD, your life expectancy can be up to 13 years less.
Right. Right.
And
Yeah.
part of that is being treated for things without the root problem being, or cause being treated. And so with ADHD, because our dopamine receptors aren't up to snuff, we find ways, we crave dopamine, and that can be done in healthy ways and not so healthy ways, like addiction
Sure.
and excess and things like that. And so that partly plays an account in that. And then same with, all sorts of other reasons why. But yeah, so it's been fascinating to learn over the last few years since I started the podcast, and in my own experiences with studying, reading, therapy, treatment as well. So yeah, it's been a wild ride.
That's oh my gosh, there's so many places to go from there. But
Yeah, yeah,
yeah, I just there was a thread I wanted to jump back to, and now I've already lost it. This is part of the problem. You're like so excited with so many
that's all
like
right. It'll come back.
branching thoughts, But I think what it was is that it matched my experience, what you were saying,
Yeah,
that I was treated first for depression, for anxiety for probably 10 years before the picture came together. And then once I was, able to get on ADD medication, and it was a long learning curve to finding the right dosage, finding the right substance, finding, doctors that can
yeah,
consistently deliver what I need, being able to afford it, having access to it, all of these things. And it's kind of a house of cards situation, because it's one of those, like, you need the medication to do your job, and you need the job to get your insurance, and you need the insurance to get your medication. And it's like one piece comes out and the whole thing comes down,
right.
so
Yeah,
there's a
yeah,
lot of that. So anyway, but it fits my experience that they spotted the depression, the anxiety, I was sort of being counseled for those things. And it wasn't until I got on medication that those things became manageable. I mean, they didn't go away, but they became
yeah, sure.
manageable. So yeah.
Yeah,
Um,
it's interesting. Yeah, yeah, and I hear that a lot, especially from women, because as I mentioned, like that being predominantly inattentive, but it doesn't mean that, like, it just, like, for folks, like, it could be like, well, like with inattentive, it could be like in school when you're a girl, you might be playing with your hair and just not really paying too much attention. But you're still like doing well, but you're not really disrupting the class. So I think
mhm.
that's part of the reason why I think women were kind of either, it just wasn't known, or they ignored. I mean, obviously there's always misogyny and sexism and things
There's
that
yeah,
go
there's
on.
other structural
Sure.
issues, but yeah, I mean, and I was a teacher too, and I am a teacher, so I can understand classroom management as part of that job, and it's easy to sort of be like, those students are behaving themselves. I don't need to look that direction. It's not
Right.
it's
Right.
not like something I don't hold my past teachers like responsible for, but definitely, I would read my textbooks in class
Yeah.
when I was
Yeah.
like in elementary school and high school. And if a teacher looked over, I had a book open in front of me, so I looked like I was doing something useful, So I
Yeah.
know
Yeah.
I know a lot of what I learned in school from not from what was being taught in class, but from what I was reading in a textbook at the time.
That's great.
So
Yeah,
yeah.
and it's also important to point out too that, like, ADHD has nothing to do with intelligence, right?
Hmm.
So you can be, it's believed Einstein had ADHD, and people like
Hmm.
Steve Jobs and so on. So it doesn't mean ADHDers are geniuses, because look at me. But yeah, so
I
you
am not
could
a
do
genius.
well.
Yeah.
You could do really well at school with undiagnosed ADHD, possibly, and just get
did
through it.
did you do well in school when you were
No,
young,
God, no.
grade wise?
No,
No.
no, no.
Did
I
you go to college?
yes, yeah, but I did everything kind of differently and not
Hmm.
following any sort of proper trajectory. So, like, um, in I was kicked out of my school in grade 1 in first grade. And
For
then
behavior
spent
or
yeah, it was mainly behavior, nothing
Mhm.
like physical, nothing like I
No,
wasn't like
no.
mean or anything. I was just kind of creative and disruptive and so on. Um, but then I spent 7 years at a Catholic school after that, and did, I think every teacher just passed me to the next teacher, next grade, just to get me out of their classroom. So I didn't
For
really do
sure.
well there. And
Mhm.
then I was held back in seventh grade by the one teacher, or not the one, but one that actually really cared. Because he's like, you got to redo this because you're not ready for high school. Um, and when I was held back in seventh grade, my dad yanked me out of that school and sent me to like a small private school that was in a house. And it was like classes were like 10 people, 10 kids. You're on a first name basis with the teachers. And I really liked that kind of mutual respect kind of thing.
Sure.
And I went from like failing every grade to like not quite straight A's, but I started doing really well for the last 2 years at that school before going to high school. And then everything just, the wheels fell off at that point. Um,
High
I went
school's
to,
when it got hard for
yeah, I
me
was
too.
kicked out of
Mhm.
four high schools, uh, just mainly for like just skipping class and just being a jerk. Not a jerk, but just being disruptive or whatever. Um, but then years later, after that, when my friends started going to college, I was like, oh, I should probably do this, I guess. And so I always wanted to get into radio broadcasting. And so I
Oh,
studied,
wow.
yeah. So I did a program in Toronto in radio and television broadcasting, majored in radio, and then realized, when you want to work in radio, I don't think anybody does anymore because, but
I'm over here grinning because that was what I
yeah.
wanted to do when I was in high school, was
Oh,
be a
that's funny.
radio
Yeah.
broadcaster. So yeah.
Well, yeah. Well, the funny thing with radio, well, not funny, but like in order to work in media, like radio or television, as an on-air person, you have to move to like the smallest market in the country and kind of gradually work your way to the biggest one. So eventually end up in New York or LA or somewhere, or Chicago or whatever. And in Canada, it was like Toronto's the largest market. So, and I was already in Toronto. So trying to,
Sure.
and not knowing anything about networking like I know now. So I I I didn't really get very far career wise, besides a few little engagements here and there, and then moved to Ireland. Met my wife, who's from Tennessee, of course. Moved back to Toronto with her, and she urged me to go back to school. And so that's when I
Mhm.
studied business, marketing, communications, and got a bachelor's in that. And then yeah, and then moved south.
So
And
what made you change from the radio to the business marketing? Was it just like, got back to school and that was the most interesting thing, or
I was
how did
always, well, it was sort of like when I was studying radio, it was 94, 95 ish. So it was before pre-internet, really,
Okay.
at least consumer internet. And um, so, yeah, I mean, there was, once the internet kind of came around, I mean, I ran a BBS on my Commodore 64 in the 80s. So I've always been a nerd, and I love communicating with different ways, like whether it's podcasting, standing on stages, coaching, or whether it's like online, like social, when social was, more about networking and less about, all the stuff. Um, and so I started getting really interested in, I've always been interested in communications and media. And
Mhm.
so started kind of blogging about that and learning more about, internet like stuff. And
Okay.
from there decided, since I really already had clients and knew quite a lot, and was working a little in sort of marketing or
Mhm.
digital marketing, or new media,
Right,
as
it
it
was
was
all
called.
brand new then, yeah.
Yeah, I was pretty pumped about it, pretty excited, and so decided it made sense to go to school and get, a degree in business and marketing, so marketing communication stuff.
And then you were almost to getting yourself back to Nashville, and
Well, getting myself to Nashville
or
at
to
that point.
Nashville.
Yeah, yeah. So, yeah, during that time. So this was like 2000. or no, early 2000s, I guess.
Early 2000s.
Um, my wife and I got pregnant, and then we did it again. Well, she did. And
How many kids do you have?
we have two,
Two.
and they're 11 and a half months apart. So they're Irish twins. So we always joke we should have seen it coming, having met in Ireland. But having the kids, like when we had my wife was pregnant with Sam, our son, our firstborn. And at the time, this was like 2004. He was born in 2005. And at the time, I was listening to a lot of podcasts in 2004 that were popping up.
Okay.
And was inspired to kind of DIY, kind of create my own sort of podcast. And so I somehow convinced my wife to partake with me. And so we created a podcast called Two Boobs and a Baby. And
oh my God, what a great name.
We being the boobs, of course. And so it was really just kind of an audio baby book to kind of share our journey with pregnancy and then ultimately with birth of our son. And then the podcast really took off and was doing well, all things considered, for 2005. Sure. And then we got pregnant again suddenly. We joked that our ratings were slipping, so we added.
You had to have another.
Yeah, you have to add a baby in an American sitcom, right?
My son was born 2006, so we were right on the same trajectory there.
Yeah. And so and when we had our second, Ella, because they were 11 and a half months apart, suddenly we had two kids in diapers and then crawling around, and it was just.
And do your kids have ADHD as well, or?
I don't really talk about that, just out of respect for them.
Sure.
So
Yeah.
It's not a big deal.
I understand.
But they, as I already said, like chances are.
Yeah. Well, that, I don't want to out my kids either, but I pretty much already have in the past, but it
was actually part of the reason why
Yeah.
we stopped the podcast, because we ran that podcast from 2005 to 2008 we moved south in 2007 to Nashville. But part of the reason why we moved down was we needed more family and help with two kids in diapers. And my parents are much older and not as helpful. And my brother was, not really living in Toronto, I don't think, at the time. And so my wife has a huge, big family and really, helpful people. But I was going to say, what was I going to say? So we ran the podcast for 3 years. And in 2008 decided to stop the podcast, mainly because our little babies were now becoming little people with little personalities. And we started feeling like they may really be mad if we share that stories, they poop their pants or whatever, as they get older. And so we were like, it's not really, it's like, as babies, it's like, okay, they're babies,
No, I've had to walk that line with my children, to being active on social media and, posting pictures and things, and, trying to be considerate that when they're adults, if they Google their name, what comes up, and they don't have a choice in what they're being, shared. I respect that you were protective of that.
Yeah. I wish I'd been diagnosed with ADHD in 2005. Well, ADD then, right? Now
Sure.
New name. But had I been diagnosed in 2005, I probably would have started a podcast all about ADHD, and then I'd still be doing it, and I'd have Joe Rogan money. But sadly not. So.
You don't know what would have come with that. So maybe it was the best thing, because I have the same thing. I'm just getting into podcasting this year. I've been talking about it for, since high school, pretty much. When I first developed an interest in doing some sort of broadcasting project, and I have the same feelings sometimes of did I miss the window? And nobody's, whatever. But at a certain point, it's there's things that you do just because they're worth doing, not because it's going to get you Joe Rogan money. So
right, exactly. And I don't have to platform bad people. So there's
that.
What did you end up working in broadcasting at all, or did you?
No, this is my first stint.
Nice,
And
cool.
you can see me still in my early learning curve here. I don't even have you guys. often I interview people that are more established, and you have the equipment and the microphones and things, and I'm
Yeah,
like, oh,
right.
oh, what are you using?
Right. Yeah, yeah,
I'm still in the, I'm pretty much in the, we like to call it the spaghetti at the wall phase,
yeah. Sure,
you just
sure.
throw things and then see what sticks.
Yep.
And I did learn along the way from a lot of the, I participated in a lot of these conferences, and you're familiar with some of the people and
Yep.
events that I got to be part of. So, World Domination Summit with Chris Gillibo, and
Yep.
Misfit Con with AJ Leon, and,
Yeah.
obviously South by Southwest. So I've been to some of these events where I met a lot of people that did work in social media marketing, and a
Yep.
lot of you have published books and run businesses, run podcasts, like all of these things, and I never have, so haven't done any of those things. So basically, I'm here kind of amateur version, learning as I go, and
All we can do.
really
Yeah.
just thrilled to like finally be doing it. So, but from all of these events, the World Domination Summit and Misfit, I went and listened to people that, like you, were professional speakers, and
Mhm.
various kinds of, from motivational speakers and to people like Brene Brown, or people that are kind of more mainstream
Mhm.
characters, TED Talk style things. And the advice I kept hearing over and over and over again was like, just get out there and try things and make
Yeah.
mistakes and do it and see what happens. So
That's it. That's all you can do. Yeah.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
So here I am.
Yeah. That's great. That's great.
But yeah, and then when I was delighted when I did see that you were doing work with ADD, because that isn't, I mean, it's not the main focus of my podcast by any means, but of course it comes up because it's part of
Yeah.
my story and my journey, and
Yeah.
it's something that I've had to learn to manage, and I'm always still learning. So yeah.
Yeah. I mean, it's the operating system. So, yeah, yeah. There's knowledge and power, like, or power and knowledge as you learn kind of,
Yeah.
like how best to do things and not do things. So,
So you have a podcast now that is around that topic, is what I'm
yeah.
hearing.
So
Yeah.
that's what Wise Squirrels is all about. So
Hmm.
it's wise from the wisdom we've accrued from really a lifetime of successes and failures, but also from, like, coping mechanisms and masking and all things that we didn't,
Hmm.
without knowing we had ADHD. And then, and then squirrels, because squirrel,
Right.
right? So yeah, so the old meme. Um, so that's why I called it Why Squirrels. But yeah, now it's like if you look up ADHD podcasts, it's usually among the first couple or few.
Okay.
So yeah,
And
it's been
I did
a
see that
real
you
joy.
run events for that too, right? You had a in person, some kind of conference style thing
I had,
recently.
yeah,
Hmm.
I planned an in-person retreat last year,
Hmm.
and I didn't I decided not to go ahead with it at the time. I think the timing was wrong.
Okay.
Um I sold like a bunch of tickets, but not enough to warrant doing it.
Okay.
And I had to be, being a sort of solopreneur, I have to be careful with, I can't be doing stuff that's going to end up costing me money instead of actually making money. Cause,
Sure. Yeah.
with two kids in college, as
Oh
it's like,
boy.
yeah.
Yeah, I've got one in college and one about to start. So yeah, I hear
Yeah.
that. But so are you going to try to do it again, or are you going to, kind of put it
Yeah.
aside? Hmm.
Yeah, that's a great question. Yeah, I think I will. I'm not sure when yet, but
Okay.
I'll include that on whysquirrels.com as the
Hmm.
website and the newsletter and all that. So I'll certainly announce it when it's things have come together. So, but I am speaking about this at a couple of upcoming events, both in Nashville actually,
Okay.
next month. So yeah,
Awesome.
yeah. Yeah, I want to do events again. I mean, I co-founded a couple of unconferences back in the day and ran all sorts of networking events like Geek Breakfast and Nash Cocktail and others here. But
Yeah.
so I do love kind of being the ringleader and bringing people together. And it's definitely something I want to do. And there doesn't seem to be a specific place for that right now. There are
Yeah.
conferences. Gillaboo has his own
Hmm.
now.
Yeah, I
Um,
saw that. Then what is it? Neuro something neurodivergent. I forgot the
yeah,
title.
yeah. I,
Hmm.
I haven't been to that. And personally, like I'm 53, so I think what I'm leaning towards is more sort of events that are not like boring in a boardroom somewhere, like corporate. I'm not going to be like that. But at the same time, I'm looking for things more for like later aged, more
Yeah,
mature folks with businesses and things, because I think
we've all kind
that's
of grown up
that,
together. Yeah. Hmm.
yeah, exactly. Yeah, yeah. And you mentioned Misfit Con. Do you talk to AJ or
Oh
Melissa
gosh,
anymore?
yeah, yeah. I saw AJ at South by Southwest a year ago in
Okay.
March, and that's the last time I saw him in person. But it had been 10 years, I mean, since we had been in person. So
What are
I
they doing?
definitely, I still keep in touch with them. So they still run a company called Misfit Incorporated,
Okay.
and they've kind of moved into, not always super clear, but it looks like they're doing a lot of film things. And I mean, they like opened a bar in South Africa. I mean, they have all sorts of business
Oh wow.
ventures, that they do. But I noticed they're doing like Sundance and, big film festival kind of events and productions. I think it's a lot of it's sort of interactive theater type
Hmm.
stuff. And they've gone in a different direction. They're not doing the conferences anymore that
Right.
were part of the era that I first encountered them.
Yeah.
But yeah, the people that I met at those events, and there's crossover with like SobCon I never went to, but I was very close with Liz Strauss, and
Mhm.
she passed away during the
Yeah.
pandemic. But her son was part of Misfit Con, and many of the people that were at SobCon, that's where AJ originally picked up a lot of the Misfit Con participants. So there's a heavy crossover between
Yeah.
World Domination Summit and SobCon and the Misfits. So all of those
Yeah.
people, I'm still very we don't necessarily talk frequently, but we stay tightly knit as a community, I think
That's great.
is the way I
Yeah.
would put it.
Yeah.
Hmm.
Yeah. No, that's awesome. Yeah. Yeah, they ran like great events and things like that. So
Hmm.
yeah, it's cool.
They do really good work in the world. Everything that they do is just, it always has a social good component, and it
Mhm.
always has like a, charity arm to it. They treat their people really well. I have a lot of admiration for the work that they do, and I follow it when I can. So.
Yeah. Yeah. It's great. Well, that's a good example of like, yeah, people that I've completely haven't heard from in the longest time, but we're still Facebook
Hmm.
friends. It's just,
Right.
so again, it's like, yeah, well, if I have to go out of my way to try to figure out, hey, what are they doing these days? Right. So,
Yeah,
um,
we've all kind of gone our separate ways, but I did describe it. I just was messaging with someone from MisfitCon this week, and I described it as, I kind of hope that it's like a symphony where we're all off playing our own instruments, but it's still making some kind of
yeah,
thing
I love that. Yeah.
together, because there is this kind of grief that comes from having separated and lost touch. And you start to feel like, oh, they're not really my friends, or they don't really care about me. I could just drop off and they wouldn't know.
Mhm.
But when I do reconnect, I realize that's not true, that we're all just doing our part and our work. And, we have kids, we have families, we have lives,
Yeah.
and because we're not geographically in the same place, you can't just, hey, come to my kid's birthday party or whatever kind of
Right.
relationship. It's different.
Yeah. I agree.
But I don't want to write these connections off as unimportant just because they're different. Yeah.
Yeah. No, absolutely. Yeah. I agree 100%.
Case in point, like
Yeah. Yeah.
I'm happy to catch up with you and
Yeah. You
see
too.
what work you've been doing in the interim. And
Are you going to South by
so.
Southwest every year or?
No, I no longer can afford it. I've come to a different place. I went through a second divorce about a year ago,
Mm-hmm.
and kind of having to adjust my lifestyle accordingly,
Yeah.
as
Yeah.
happens. And there's just going to be a time period where I'm rooted in place. And so that's where, again, this podcast is partly about, hey, I can't, globetrot anymore and run off to conferences and go see you guys in person, but I can get on a Zoom call and record an interview, and
Yeah, for sure.
like kind of keep some of the magic alive of what I was doing when I had more resources. So
Yeah,
yeah,
no, I think that's great. Yeah, I haven't been to South by in a long time, so but yeah, I do miss those days for sure.
it was a lot different from what I remembered.
Yeah, the last time, I mean, I think the last time I was there was 2011, I think.
I was at that one.
Yeah, and
Yeah.
that one was really different than 2007 or 8 when I started going, because that was, I think that was the first year that like brands started buying
Yeah,
signage on all the local restaurants and
I
bars and
remember
places, and it
that.
was like the Salesforce Lounge, and I was like, I thought that was a bar called whatever.
Right? It was
Yeah,
I was at the Whole Foods party and,
yeah,
all of these things. Yeah, I noticed this time, there was like I can't remember the name of the bar, but there was like a beer bar that a lot of us would meet up at, and I kind of out of habit like went to that spot and it was closed, and I had this like, okay, this is
yeah.
really a different thing. Like the places I know to go are no longer there was my moment of like, I'm in a different town. So,
Right, right. Yeah, yeah,
it was
yeah,
a little odd. And there was a lot more film last time. I mean, maybe it was when I was there too. I mean, obviously they have like the tech week and film week and things like, but
yeah. It
I
used
felt the focus seemed to have shifted. Yeah.
Yeah, I remember. Well, it used to be like, of course, it was music, and then they added
Mhm.
film, and then they added interactive, I think. But interactive blew up because of so many DIY people. You know,
Mhm.
if you're a musician or a filmmaker or an actor, you really
Mhm.
need to understand social and content and internet. So I think that started drawing internet. That's how internet, like the South by Southwest interactive portion, like just grew like crazy. And that
Mhm.
was Hugh Forrest's baby, and I think it still is. Um, and so what? Yeah, and but I do remember interactive. I was never there for the music portion. I was
Me
there
either.
for
Yeah.
interactive, but then interactive had some crossover with film some years. And so I was able, I
Mhm.
remember I was able to go into some of the panels because I'm a big movie nerd. And
Oh,
so,
are you? Oh, I
yeah,
didn't
yeah.
know
So it
that.
was fun. It was fun to go in and sit with like, you know, different directors talking about their films and people that I was familiar with already. So I was like, oh, sweet. This is awesome. So
Yeah.
anyway,
Do you know a fellow named Ed Riggs? I think was
rings a bell.
because he was somehow connected to AJ. I think he had been at MisfitCon as well, and I know he has some kind of movie software platform. I think it
Okay.
has to do with like rating movies, something like that. And he was one of the people I was spending time with when I was there. But yeah, the one thing that really grabbed me this last time was I saw Tom and John, who I've also interviewed for this interview series, and they are
Mm.
doing like a kindness project um, that has to do with kindness and generosity. And so it was nice to find like the charity social good component that I sort of always valued the most out
Yeah.
of that whole crop of things,
Yeah.
and my goal was always to kind of connect with those people that were using these technologies and platforms to do like these bigger things that let like harnessing the potential that we all had in those early optimistic, maybe naive days where before it became evil, as you put it. So yeah, no, the good is still there. There's always
Yeah.
that little nugget of those people that are still like, trailblazing, championing these technologies as like a force for good. And
Oh,
I don't
absolutely.
want to give up on that. So I was happy to find that element. Yeah, I
Yeah.
think.
No, that's great. Yeah.
But
I do want to go back one of these
yeah,
days, but yeah.
don't we all
Yeah.
like I want to go back to our glory days of tweet ups and
Yeah.
craziness. I know. So the other thing is that fracturing of the like where people are hanging out, I think you and I are both on Substack. I noticed
Mhm.
that you have an active presence on that platform.
Yeah.
And then, just today I was interacting with someone who's raising the concerns about the people who run Substack, maybe platforming, not good people. And I was having to struggle with, okay, should I stay on this platform? Should I leave it for something else? Yeah, and we're all kind of dealing with this where do we go problem of
Yeah.
like, well, Facebook has issues and Instagram has issues, and like none of them are really like safe or whatever the word is. So, you're
Yeah.
having to make these judgment calls, and same with the AI stuff. We're all deciding like, is it okay to use? Is it not okay to use? There's a lot of like us sort of debating,
Yeah.
but I don't feel like there's one watering hole anymore. Where before I felt like Twitter was kind of my central place that brought all those people together.
Oh yeah, for
And I
sure.
haven't found that in a while. So that's
Yeah.
a big shift, you know.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I don't know if that exists anymore. I think it's now like groups or
Hmm.
and even then, if it's a Facebook group, for example, then you still have to remember to be on Facebook or you're not, and to check the group and stuff. Um, so, but yeah, I mean, with Twitter, yeah, back in the day, because you could create like a private list and a public list, and so you would group people together based on like their interests or
Yeah.
geographics and all that stuff, so that.
Did you ever use the hashtags to like hang out in a channel and sort of
Oh yeah,
form
yeah,
a
yeah. I
community
use like
that
tweet
way? Yeah.
chat as
Hmm.
well, and I think it was Chris Messina who created the hashtag for
Oh, I
Twitter
know
back in the day.
Chris. Yeah.
Yeah, he was the one who came up with the hashtag. Um, I
Oh
forget
my
how
gosh,
it
that's
became.
a name I haven't heard in a while too.
Yeah,
It's
I
funny,
haven't talked to
these
him in
old
years.
connections. Yeah,
Yeah, yeah.
yeah.
But I think I'm pretty sure he was the one that came up with the idea because before that we were using, and before lists
Yeah.
we were using like it wasn't a Google sheet because it was before, or maybe it was, or maybe no, it was a wiki. I think we were using like a wiki to kind of add ourselves based on
Hmm.
our interests. Like that was very early. I
Right.
remember Brogan like kind of created that, like Chris, or I don't know if he created it or, but that was one way that like you could say like I'm interested in coffee and live in Nashville, and you could like
He's another of my old buddies from the social media days, and
yeah.
he has the wonderful privilege of being the first to be banned from the podcast. He's not allowed on my show. I don't know if
Oh,
you
he's banned
have
from
you,
your
yeah,
podcast.
have you seen the banned list? I think you're on the banned list as well, Dave. Actually, now that I
What am
think
I
about
doing
it.
here?
Mhm. Well, just because you're banned doesn't mean I can't forgive you and allow you on the show. I know it's totally a joke list. You know me and I have the most screwball sense of humor, which I believe seems to be common among us ADHDers. So
I
maybe you
think
do
yeah, a lot of
too.
us.
Mhm.
Yeah, 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 yeah.
Yeah, yeah, but no, Chris is banned to the extent that he probably doesn't want to be a guest on my show right now.
Oh,
So,
I wouldn't mind that. I don't know. I haven't talked to Chris in a while, so
but no,
it's been a
he's
while.
a lovely person. I'm very fond of
Yeah,
him.
he's
So.
great. Yeah,
Mhm.
yeah, yeah,
But yeah, all these old names, Chris Messina, Chris Brogan, all our connections. So
yeah, yeah. It's hard to keep up. But yeah, I would love to do like a reunion or something.
yeah, it's kind of that early Twitter crowd, because even I was pretty late. I didn't get onto Twitter till 2010.
Mm,
So I didn't, there's kind of that 2007, 2008, like, or even earlier, there's a group of people that kind of, like you were saying, that I see pictures where they're all in group photos from the various like Blog World or these
yeah,
events that we were at, and I can recognize the people and sometimes don't really, like, I didn't know that Justin Levy also knew Chris Brogan or whatever until I see a picture later. I'm like, oh, I didn't realize these people worked together early days,
yeah,
Jeff
yeah. I haven't
Culver,
talked to
like
him in
various
forever
people.
either.
Yeah, I
Yeah,
could
yeah,
keep throwing names, but you know the crowds, and basically like I came late to that party and joined in kind of when everybody had already established those connections,
yeah,
but definitely really miss that group of humans because I think everybody had this like idealism and energy and just every single one of those people, all of those names did work that was aimed at helping people, and I think
yeah,
most of them still do,
yeah.
and I love that, and I really that's what I want to showcase with this series, and that and the wacky humor too.
Yeah,
So,
absolutely. Yeah, yeah.
yeah, yeah. So
Oh,
anyway,
yeah.
I'm like, let's bring it back, guys. Let's bring it
Yeah, yeah,
back.
yeah.
You know.
Yeah. I'm excited to listen to more episodes and yeah, see who else you
Oh
you
yeah,
you
yeah,
bring
and
in.
so we have two types of episode. We have Irvin and I have like where we just record the two of us and we kind of like free form more like a talk show,
Yeah.
talk about topics. And then we have the interview series, which now because of time constraints and difficulty with scheduling, I'm mostly handling the interviews. And also because of my social media days, I have a lot more sort of connections with people that are, like,
Yeah.
hey, come on the show, and people like you that already have experience, comfortable talking on a camera kind of people.
Oh yeah.
But
Love it.
but Irvin, he's from El Salvador. We work together at the plant nursery where I work for a day job,
Yeah.
and he's just fabulously interesting and hilarious, and you know, just massively enriches the content. So I'm really, really looking forward to continuing to work with him. But I wish
Me
you
too.
could
I'm
meet
continuing.
him.
Yeah. Well, I will be tuning in for sure.
Yeah, you can meet him through the episodes later on.
Yeah.
Yeah. But anyway, we're approaching the end of the hour, and would you tell me one more time the name of your book as well? Because usually when I realize someone has a book, I usually take the time to read it before we interview, and
Oh, it's
unfortunately,
kind
I
of
just
old
didn't
now,
get a
but
chance. Yeah.
yeah, I'm
So.
working on my next one now. But
Oh, are you?
my original is New Business Networking, so
Okay.
you can find it on Amazon. But yeah, I just encourage folks to drop by Y Squirrels, and if you
For your more current work.
yeah, and there's also a an ADHD assessment on the site. I don't see the results of it, so
Okay.
I do encourage people to use that at ysquirrels.com if they think they might have ADHD and they just want to get a better idea.
Yeah.
Of course, and it is sound and everything, but most importantly, regardless of whether you do that, just go talk to your doctor and
Yeah.
and get
And
see
get someone who
us.
is a professional and not us.
Yes.
Yeah. Well, so do you do consulting as well? It sounds like, or
Yeah,
coaching.
I'm
Hmm.
available right now. I do everything from I call myself a communication strategist really because
Hmm.
everything I do is around the word communication. So whether that's internal communication across teams and departments and improving relationships and internal communications that way, or whether it's external communications like branding and marketing, promotions, publicity, content, all of that stuff because of my background in digital and marketing for that matter. So yeah, so I encourage
Awesome.
folks, yeah, you can find me everywhere, but Y Squirrels is the best place to start, and then find me everywhere. So Dave Delaney on all the places except Twitter.
Except Twitter, right?
I'm
Which
still Dave
again
Delaney on Twitter. I
is
just don't use
so
it.
like I know I'm not on there, but it is interesting how so far many of the people I've invited are people originally that I met on Twitter, and so it's really tragic what happened there. That
Yeah, it hurts my heart.
it's hard to look back. But thank you so much for your time, and
Yeah,
really
thanks,
looking
Jackie.
forward. Is your new book going to be about ADHD, or is it some
Yeah, probably. I'm still
broader?
working on the
Mhm.
kind of outline of it, but it's yeah.
Well, I'll
Yeah.
definitely look forward to having you back when that's
Yeah, thanks.
underway,
Yeah. I'll
because
keep you posted
yeah,
for sure.
I probably could use that myself. So keep that in mind. Well, thank
Well, thanks.
you. I
Thank
appreciate you
you.
so much. I'm going to end the recording if I can do that. Uh,
Well, thanks. That was fun.
well, if I could figure out how not
You just
leave
chop it.
call. I know this is going to be fun. Settings.
Oh, it's up at the top right. I think if you click the
Thank
little square.
you. There's
Yeah.
so many things up here though. Notes, people. I just want to turn off the recording. There it is. Ha. Okay.